Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Line update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL defensive back Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. This podcast is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your sports betting needs. Baseball, golf, soccer, plus all the top fights in MMA and boxing. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head to the online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of over 150 slots games. Head to betonline.ag today to get in on the action. Use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. State of State is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out their Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today. Hi, everyone, and welcome to State of State in the middle of 4th of July week. Justin King is back from vacation, and it's a perfect time to get the King's thoughts on some recent comments by Penn State Athletic Director Pat Kraft, who it was available last week for Blue White Illustrated, was put out publicly on their YouTube channel. Great conversation with Nate Bauer and Pat Kraft in regards to Beaver Stadium, NIL, the future of Penn State football, Penn State's place in the Big Ten, a lot of different things that I am very interested to get Jay King's thoughts on. Thank you for joining us. Like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Comment on social media, comment on YouTube. We appreciate it so very much. So, Justin, first of all, how was your vacation? You look rested.
Yeah, it was great. You know, spent a lot of time at Universal. Harry Potter, got my wand and all that good stuff. Yeah.
There we go. That sounds about right. That's perfect for you.
You know, love some Harry Potter, man.
Yes. All right. So let's get to business here. Pat Kraft, I want to preface this. I love Pat Kraft's bullish approach to being the athletic director for Penn State, the way that he cares about Penn State in general. He has an emotional attachment to this that I think is so refreshing and so important for Penn State fans altogether, regardless of what sport you're tuning in for. However, in this interview that he gave with Nate Bauer, he's very aggressive and very bold in some of his statements. So I just want to say I like the way that he's putting these out here, but I think they're very good discussion points altogether. So, Justin, I want to start with this one. Pat Kraft saying about the Big Ten adding teams, quote, "The Big Ten can add whoever they want. We're going to beat them. We're going to go at them. We're going to attack them. None of my staff, none of my coaches are saying that they're worried about any team that's being added to the Big Ten." I love that approach, and there's a lot of new competition coming in this year. And yes, you can sit there maybe from a football standpoint, since that's what this show is all about, is that, yeah, adding some of these teams, they feel like winnable games for Penn State, but there's certainly going to be some challenges on the schedule this year, i.e. USC, Washington, and even if you look at UCLA, some people think that might be a layup, but we really don't know what we're getting with the Bruins this year. I love that Kraft feels that way, but in reality, these incoming teams from the old Pac-12, do you think it's going to be a bigger challenge than Penn State realizes?
Bigger challenge? No, I think you have to show confidence in your ability of your coaches and the teams that they've built to say that they're not afraid of who's coming in from a competition standpoint. This is high level athletics where competition is a prerequisite that you're signing up for. Like hopefully it's hiring coaches and, operational leaders that are wanting to compete. So with that being said, the building of teams and other teams coming in from conferences, I think he's just trying to give a vote of confidence to his coaches and like the mentality in which the athletic department is moving from, which is a very bold, we're here to stay, we got your support, and all those different type of things, where essentially laying the groundwork because there's not going to be any excuses for like what we're going to do from a support standpoint, that whatever we have to do to support our team against these teams coming in. That's how I read it coming from an athletic director, because that's the way he sounded is more, it sounds like a head coach would be talking to the media, to his teammates.
I agree.
You know what I mean? So with that being said, it's like when coaches do that, It's to rile them up to say, like, look, I got your back. Like that basketball coach that gets that T to argue with the ref to be like, oh, coach got our back. I think that's all he's doing with the rest of the staff, knowing that, like, hey, Oregon's coming in, USC, UCLA, they're throwing money around. We're here to support. I think that's just from the, you know, the media play of it. But I think that's a good job from his standpoint.
Another big statement from Pat Kraft, quote, "The Big Ten needs Penn State, but we can't just sit back and expect certain outcomes." Now, a lot of that is in regard to this conversation about the whiteout game, and we'll get to that. But I do want to focus on that statement. The Big Ten needs Penn State. I discussed it amongst myself last week, and that, like, I hear him, I agree, and I also disagree at the same time. It's a big, bold statement in this era of conference realignment and all the things that are happening. It made me think about the TV contracts that are in place, I believe are in place until 2029. A lot of people get frustrated about Fox, CBS, NBC, who's picking what games, the draft that happens in regards to the schedule for the year. Yes, Penn State fans are frustrated that Fox wants to put games at noon and it hurts the whiteout, so on and so forth. So by saying the Big Ten needs Penn State, it is one of the more important teams within the Big Ten. I understand that. Brand notoriety, it is a big team. It is a big brand, but at the same time, is that saying that this whiteout issue is a really, really big deal for Penn State in the grand scheme of the Big Ten?
I don't know. Why'd you bring up the whiteout? And the fact that he said
Because in order to get the whiteout in a night game environment and against the best home team possible, that's not possible right now, considering Fox is going to look at, for instance, Penn State, Ohio State. Both teams are undefeated, or even if both teams have just good records altogether. That will probably be a big noon kickoff selection for them. Thus, the whiteout is damaged because you're doing it at noon Eastern as opposed to a night game. So in order to get the outcome of best home opponent, night game for the whiteout, and Penn State gets to pick that, which you and I agree only benefits one team, you have to broker a deal with one specific network. And I don't know if that's going to happen at all in the next 5 years under this TV deal.
Again, you gotta, it's like playing poker, I guess. But I guess when I hear that statement, I didn't think the whiteout game didn't come to mind, I guess, immediately. But I mean, the overall statement that the Big Ten needs Penn State, I think that there's some validity to that. I mean, you just think of the alumni base, you talk about TV ratings, like this power cities that it's around where you draw fans that are watching the games. That's the value to the media partners. So, like, from the media partner standpoint, regardless if they have a game at night or not, I think that's where Penn State fans need to understand is that their ratings are going to be the same if they play the game at noon or if they play it at night. So to them, they don't care. It's only beneficial to us. So to his statement, I think goes to the former statement of the TV ratings and all the power that Penn State comes with from the viewership and media rights type of situation. From that standpoint, I think that's the value of Penn State. When it comes to the whiteout and all that, I think that's just a different conversation. So with him saying that, I think there's some validity to it. Bold statement, though. Bold statement.
It is bold, and I agree with you on both fronts there. I don't think the whiteout should be a big enough deal to Penn State to the point that they get upset with the Big Ten, upset with TV networks. Because the only other solution, if the whiteout means that much to you to pick the time and place, then yes, you have to find a network that is going to do whatever it is you want. Then you're very much looking at a Notre Dame NBC model, in which case, is there a world in which Penn State is an independent at some point in the probably far off future? I doubt it.
Penn State started.
And I agree. But still, in this era, it feels like you're either a part of the SEC and the Big Ten or you're not.
No, I don't think they're ever going to be independent. I just don't. That doomsday situation of them going independent isn't really. Yeah, I think Pat Kraft's doing what he's supposed to do, put his neck on the line as an athletic director and not hiding in the shadows and just waiting for things to fall over, just trying to show I really just believe he's trying to show his coaches that I'm in the boat with you. Like, I think this has nothing to do with anybody else besides, hey, I'm in there with the ride with you guys. Like, I think he's shown it from different levels of support. And you hear it, man, former athletic directors, it's not that he's not fundraising and doing that stuff. I mean, they have a $700 million project. They got to figure out this money all over the place. But I think showing emotionally that you're vested in understanding what the coaches are vested in, I think is a good sign, especially when you go to the media, because now we can't point fingers, or kind of limits anything where you're saying, hey, the administration is not supporting us, or this isn't, no, you heard him say, we're here to compete and we're here to win and they need us. So like you see that he views the Penn State property as something elite and not something that's going to be taken second fiddle to anybody. So this sounds like a State of the Union address to the Penn State coaching staffs, more so than anybody else.
I agree with you. And I like how aggressive he is with it. And he said that in regard to attempting to get the white out exactly what Penn State wants, it's going to take some finessing, in his words, some advocating. It's a tough thing. And you and I have discussed it to death on this. The business side of it, I think, is going to trump the emotional side of it. It's a tough part of where we are right now with the business of college football. I think we'd all love to see it against the best home opponent at night every single year. But that caters to one team. So it's tough to put your bias aside with that stuff. You mentioned the $700 million for Beaver Stadium. Pat went into a lot of detail in regards to how the renovation process was decided upon. That number freaked out a lot of people, but he went on to explain that when he gave a tour of Beaver Stadium to the Board of Trustees, he was saying, in order for us to upgrade, I'll refer to it as like the basic needs of the stadium, that's 200 mil without blinking. If you wanted to tear the whole thing down and build a new stadium, and like that you and I have talked about, a la Kyle Field for Texas A&M, which they did a phenomenal job of, he's like, that price tag is about $2 billion. So 700 sounds real good, doesn't it? Because all of a sudden 200 is to like upgrade circulation, winterize the place, bathrooms, like all these like creature necessities that a fan would need. And then, oh, by the way, let's improve some things. Let's make sure we can get the suites improved, the boxes improved, press box improved, the sideline experience improved, like all those things that will bolster revenue for this thing. He's like, $200 million doesn't change how much money you're going to bring in. It's the additional $500 million that's now going to make this thing more profitable outside of just 7 Saturdays a year. Hearing those numbers, it made me feel like, okay, great. This feels like a good investment. But what do you think? Because you've been on the side of this, the business of football.
I had that context already. I understood when they were first coming through. I mean, it was probably 2018, 19. And it was when Sandy was the AD and they were talking about renovating Beaver Stadium. And the first bid that went up, I think it's kind of got into the whole thing with the Board of Trustees. I think that's kind of where it started, is that $200 million was like, why are we going to spend $200 million when it actually needs 700 or 800? And so it was like, wow, like we're going to do the whole thing. So when that happened, it changed the trajectory of the different pieces that were coming in place, right? We talk about, this is all remember, this is all pre-NIL. This is why Penn State was behind the 8 ball, didn't have like an NIL plan, because it started off with like, okay, we'll take care of the stadium. It's 200 million going into it. And there's like, well, to do anything better, it's going to be this much. And so, and at that time, again, NIL was coming out. And so you saw that the price went up. And then that's when the whole Board of Trustees bull crap going back and forth with like, hey, this, that, and the third, and people voting. But so I had context of that whole situation going, the nuances of it. So it does make sense when they land at $700 million for what the plan is. I mean, time will only tell if things are right. I just wish we would always go back and kind of trace the steps that we had. That's the one thing that they never do in college athletics, is go back and look at the former film and see like what mistakes were made and what can we do better. Because I mean, that's the only thing. But I digress. But I think having context of that, it wasn't a big deal about the $700 million, because it's like, oh, they said no to this because it was like, why are we going to do $200 million and it's not fixing anything or making it better? And like you won't even know about the renovations. The same people that were against that were against the $700 million. So there's like a little weird context in that, you know what I mean? So, I don't know. Who cares? Build a stadium, make some money, and let's go.
It's better than $2 billion.
That's all it is. Like, but like at the end of the day, who cares? Honestly, like, because we're going to show up to people are going to show up to the games. People are going to watch the games. People are going to buy hot dogs. People are going to drink. People are going to come. And it's like, we can talk about the semantics of whatever it is, but I mean, there's a lot of money going to be flowing around. Like, again, let's just not be short-sighted. Whatever. I'm over all the semantics.
It's a long-term play. And the idea that Pat was explaining was, quote quote, a whole new build for Beaver Stadium would have cost probably $2 billion plus 110,000 capacity stadiums aren't being built. In fact, they're going in the opposite direction in that you're going for more creature comforts, but less physical bodies in the building. So you're maximizing revenue in that respect. Pat went on to say that renovations to Beaver Stadium are helping to recruit general students. The Welcome Center could host weddings and proms. It's about using the facility more than 7 days a year, as I talked about. So again, like we talked about, like concerts, sporting events from other sports, pro leagues, all that sort of stuff. That's one thing. Hearing proms and weddings in the Welcome Center, I was like, oh yeah, I never thought about that. But somebody that's a diehard Penn State fan or is from the State College community makes a ton of sense.
They would rent that out in a heartbeat.
In a heartbeat.
You know how many
But it was
weddings I've
something
been
I
to?
never thought of. And I was like, okay, like clearly these people are putting a lot of time and effort into trying to figure out how do we monetize this? Because when you really look at it, 7 days a year is when anybody's spending money in there. It's like, yeah, then you got to do a little bit more.
I haven't been to a Penn State wedding where the lion hasn't shown up yet.
Oh yeah,
Every Penn State wedding that I've been
Yeah.
to, the lion shows up. So I'm people are pretty proud to get married and represent Penn State. So that's a good. I never thought about that because a lot of people get married at the place on campus. I know a lot of people come back and get married up there by the Palmer Art Museum.
Oh
It's
yeah,
like
I know.
across
I'm
the
blanking
street.
on the name. I
I
know.
know I'm blanking on it. It's like the Spiritual Center or something. Like
Yes,
it's something up there.
something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Or just get married right in front of the Lion Shrine, whatever it is you want.
I mean, just rent it out. I mean,
So Pat went on to talk about NIL, which I think some of his comments were interesting. He told Nate Bauer, quote, with the House ruling about to be settled and the new NCAA rule changes, I'm as confident as I've ever been in the NIL space. We can, in essence, bring all of our NIL dealings in-house. He also went on to say, when you have the second most CEOs in the country that are Penn State alumni, there's a chance to partner with those companies. That's the real NIL. And then the collective space will become will become events driven and go to more of a one-to-one connection with the athletes. So obviously you're not surprised, but
no, I've been saying it for 3 years and everybody's been trying to raise money. So yeah, I'm kind of irritated by that revelation, but whatever. Yeah, that's a good idea. He's right.
no, it just makes a ton of sense. And I found it interesting to hear how the collective, for instance, Happy Valley United, would maybe I wouldn't say that's a smaller role, but like you've seen how they've done activations,
Much smaller
events in Philadelphia, the golfing tournament, I guess, that they put together in State College, one-to-one things with athletes where maybe it's a public appearance or a social media activation, like something like that. But yes, absolutely going after a CEO that works for X major company, whatever it is, to try and potentially involve the brands.
Well, I mean, that's the thing I think is the missing piece. Is like, all right, what value are you providing to these companies? Like, if it's Penn State, that's not that the Penn State isn't the individual in name, image, and likeness. It has to be something that's like adjacent to Penn State that they identify with to connect with. It's not just like, hey, we're Penn State and hey, can partner with us because that's partnering with the athletic department. It's a completely different thing when you're partnering with 19 to 21-year-olds that make up an entity. So I think it's a good idea. It's just there's more steps, but yeah.
I still am like, I don't want to see a logo on a jersey. Like it still bothers the hell out of me, man.
But like, oh, he was talking about like partnerships like
no,
that.
he wasn't specifically talking about that, but just kind of saying in general, if you can get former Penn State alumni that's a CEO at whatever company and then involve that company. And now we've heard all the rumblings of like, okay, corporate logos on fields, corporate logos on uniforms, even potentially kind of like the way the NBA does it. There's still me, the traditionalist, the fan of Penn State. I'm like, I don't want to see a corporate logo on a jersey. I can't handle that.
When I hear him say doing partnerships, I think of someone having some influence. Okay, you say Twitter, for example. Okay, you do an NIL deal where you have the players of Lockdown U do a weekly thing. How Elon Musk is trying to do that, and then from that generated thing, you can promote your players away from Penn State, and you're just like using the Penn State power to highlight the actual players. Let's say Lockdown U, for example, since that's the established brand that's been there. But like, okay, do that with these guys, and they can use that revenue flow from a former Penn State alumni that's now a CEO at Twitter. But for Penn State to go to Twitter and say like, hey, let's do a deal on Twitter. You put your stuff on our jerseys. That has nothing to do with a player. So let's get that clear about NIL. That is not NIL. That's corporate sponsorships. You know what I mean? Like that's completely different. That's still commoditizing the athlete. So it sounds good, but I mean, it's just a different bucket of NIL. So let's like get that clear in that standpoint.
Hell, if there's going to be some revenue sharing where, yes, it is going to go to the players of a certain team because we're talking about all sports potentially. Who knows? You might find a CEO somewhere who's like, I love Penn State wrestling. Cool.
Well, I guess when I say that NIL in the sense of like, yeah, there's a part of NIL when you say name, image, and likeness, like helping a player like promote his name, image, and likeness versus like a player getting paid. I mean, it's the pay for play. It's just, I don't think that's NIL, right? That's more of the revenue sharing piece of like, okay, we're bringing in revenue, like everybody get $30.
Tell us what you guys think. Get in us in the comment section on YouTube, on social media. Like, comment, subscribe, rate us, turn on notifications. Justin, good to have you back. And happy 4th of July to everyone that's watching this in the United States, because we have an international audience, which is great. But happy 4th of July. Happy belated Canada Day. Just hope everybody has a great week.
Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Also, let us know what you think of the show on social media and check out all of our content on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Search for the handle @StateOfStatePod. State of State is presented by Bet Online and by Blue White Outfitters.